I think that I'm surprised it took a decade after New Kids on the Block were a hit for the industry at large to catch on that needed to happen. That was just it's just an outgrowth. I mean, who didn't grow up? You know, when I talk to guys like like the Azoffs of the world who started working with the Eagles when he was a kid, and he grew up with this music. There are people who grew up with the Rolling Stones, and in the black culture, there's people who grew up with the Earth, Wind and Fires and the Commodores, and the idea of growing up with groups is something that has happened in our lifestyle. It's part of the American lifestyle. I mean, my parents grew up with the Temptations and that whole thing, and the Four Tops and what have you. So I think that it's not surprising to me. I'm just surprised that it took us till 2000 to continue that, because for a long time we weren't introducing, the music industry wasn't introducing a lot of male groups. It was more about solo artists and predominantly about females during the 80s, the mid to late 80s.
I definitely agree with that, because you had En Vogue, SWV, Jade. It was like a continuous list of girl groups, and very few male groups, and Boyz II Men pretty much straddled that line between pop and R&B, because they get love from the R&B crowd and they really got love from the pop crowd.
Yeah, they did, until Jodeci came, and then it was really, Jodeci was a reflection of the culture again, and they were more real, and they were more the guys in the neighborhood, and they weren't as polished, and they were more polished when it came to presentation, but their image and everything didn't seem quite as put together, quite as manufactured, and that's what I mean when I say polished. They didn't seem as manufactured, whereas Boyz II Men really tended to, they followed more of the template of the groups that came before them, that preceded them, the groups like the Temptations and all that. And then Jodeci came and defined what male groups would be like in the new, in the new millennium, so to speak, going into the new millennium.
I definitely agree. Now, how do you feel about the current state of the music industry, because record sales are not selling, and then with Napster and all the other digital outlets to go get music, and compared to back then where going gold was the equivalent of going platinum, while now going gold is like it's going platinum. So how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, it's just piracy and the ability to just get a record now. I mean, people don't really want to pay for music. They want music, they just don't want to pay for it. I don't think that the love of music has disappeared. I just think that the people that manufacture the music have to come up with a new way for people to want to receive that music. And I think that in that process, I think they'll find an escalation in sales again. In other words, like if you look at the history and the evolution, music went from the 8-track tape to the cassette to the CD to now is download. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with downloads is the industry at large is not able to control their content. Whereas with the other three format and everything that predated even the three that I mentioned, they could control the content. They can't control it because the internet is so, it's still such,
it's wide open.
West. I think that if the industry at large ever figures out how to control its content, again, it will be able to have, I think we'll see that escalation in sales again. But I also think that the days of people just buying a whole album, we might be past that time forever, and in that respect, I think that your analogy that if a record sells gold, an album, then it's considered a success story. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that in general, you probably will have fewer fans to buy the entire album because most people will download the singles that they like.
And now, with the internet being a big marketing boom as it is, how do you feel about the way that it's helped new artists gain exposure via YouTube, via MySpace, and pretty much gone are the days of passing your demo off to somebody to shop it, or going knocking on label doors and shopping it yourself?
To me, if there's anyone that's benefited the most, it's the new artists from the introduction of the internet. They've obviously, clearly benefited more than anyone, in my opinion, because it has taken the need to have to wait for a record company, a label, to see you and to decide and say, hey, we're interested in you. It's been able to really affect that process and circumvent that process even. And in certain cases where people might not have been able to get the attention and get someone to sign them as artists, it means they don't have to wait because they can, create their own fire, through using the internet as the mechanism that they use to start the fire. So it's been good in that respect. I think in other respects, it's probably, it's 60-40 in some of the other areas in terms of careers. It also means that, an artist who has an opportunity to be really great but might not understand all the elements and the people and all the pieces that need to go into creating a great project, in many cases they'll blow their opportunity because you get one time to make a great first impression. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes there's a process that, an artist goes through when they are signed to a label where they help them define who they are, and they help them to perfect and to really tighten and make their presentation of their craft and their music and their musical style very crisp so that they hit a mark and hit a note with listeners. And oftentimes when you don't go through that filtering process and you're not just so overwhelmingly gifted that you can overcome the mistakes, then it misses out on an opportunity so oftentimes for people to see just how great you are and say I like you, because maybe the presentation is not so good because you know how to do.
Definitely seems like gone are the days of like what Motown used to do with artist development, and now it's like once you get signed, it's like you're automatically thrown into the fire, so to speak.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people that don't want to spend time or money, a lot of labels, with developing artists anymore. Too much money. And a lot of artists get their launch because of what they do on the internet. You get to a certain point and you've got a certain track record and a certain level of a following at the internet level, it becomes a precursor to the record company to say, hey, this kid is a star. We should look at this. This person is, so-and-so and such and such.
So it's pretty much...
it's interesting because there's a bunch of things attached to it.
So it's pretty much the do-it-yourself era, grassroots movement, have your numbers, stats, hits up, and more than likely, kids, you will be a star. Now, when you were over at Giant, did you ever have to face a conflict in terms of like an act that you just wanted and you wanted to really sign, but somebody was kind of like, I think maybe we should pass up?